Mr. Jamal Khashoggi was a Saudi Arabian dissident journalist who had voluntarily left Saudi Arabia in 2017 because of the country's repressive autocratic political system. He was last seen on the early afternoon of October the 2nd, 2018, entering the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, Turkey, in order to obtain a legal document showing that he had divorced his first wife so that he could marry his Turkish fiancée. He never exited the building, and eventually, by the past week, and even the Saudi government admitted that he had been killed. There are different versions now of his death, at least two different versions. Some Turkish authorities claim that he was tortured to death, while the official Saudi version of events is that he died in a fist fight following an argument with certain fellow Saudis who were inside the consulate. Be that as it may, he was 59 years old when he died, having been born on October the 13th, 1958. In addition to journalism, he published books. He had been a general manager and editor-in-chief of Al Arab news agency. He had also served as editor for the Saudi Arabian newspaper Al Watan, turning it into a platform for Saudi Arabian progressives. Mr. Khashoggi said, after fleeing Saudi Arabia in September 2017 and going into a self-imposed exile, that the Saudi Arabian government had forbidden him to use Twitter. Later, he wrote newspaper articles criticizing the Saudi government. Especially his target of criticism was Saudi Arabia's crown prince, Mr. Mohammed bin Salman, and the Saudi king, Salman. He also opposed the Saudi Arabian-led intervention in Yemen, a southern neighbor of Saudi Arabia. He was born in Medina, the second holiest city of Islam. His grandfather, Muhammad Khashoggi, who was of Turkish origin, his original name was Khashoggi, married a Saudi Arabian woman and was personal physician to King Abdul Aziz Al Saud, the founder of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. He was the nephew of the high-profile Saudi Arabian arms dealer Adnan Khashoggi, known for his part in the Iran-Contra scandal, who was estimated to have had a net worth of $4 billion in the early 1980s. Mr. Khashoggi himself obtained a bachelor's degree in business administration from Indiana State University in the United States in 1982. Following his graduation, he worked as a regional manager for Tihama bookstores, then as a correspondent for the Saudi Gazette, and as an assistant manager for Okaz. In 1991, he became managing director and acting editor-in-chief of Al Madina, serving in that position until 1999. He admitted having joined the Muslim Brotherhood at his university, along with various other students, and he continued. Some of the current ministers and deputies did also join, but later every one of us developed their own political tendencies and views. When the first Egyptian democratically elected president, Mr. Mohamed Morsi, was overthrown in a military coup in July 2013, the Muslim Brotherhood was outlawed in Egypt. According to Mr. Khashoggi, political reform and democracy were impossible in the Arab countries without accepting political Islam as a part of political democracy and reform. He also criticized Salafism, the ultra-conservative Sunni movement. Interestingly, he did know the terrorist leader Mr. Osama bin Laden, who was also an ethnic Saudi but left the country in the 1980s for Afghanistan. And he interviewed bin Laden several times, usually meeting him in Tora Bora and once more in Sudan. According to Al Arabiya, Mr. Khashoggi once tried to persuade bin Laden to quit violence. He was the only non-royal Saudi Arabian who knew of the royals' intimate dealing with Al-Qaeda before the September 2001 terrorist attacks on the United States. After those attacks, he broke off contact with bin Laden. He briefly became the editor-in-chief of the Saudi Arabian daily Al Watan in 2003. After less than 2 months, he was dismissed in May 2003 by the Saudi Arabian Information Ministry, having allowed a columnist to criticize the Islamic scholar Ibn Taymiyyah, who lived from 1263 to 1328, who is considered the founding father of Wahhabism. After that, many Westerners who are interested in the Saudi and Middle Eastern political and social affairs started to consider Mr. Khashoggi as a Saudi progressive. He then exiled himself voluntarily to London, Britain, becoming an advisor to Prince Turki Al Faisal. And in April 2007, he started to work as an editor-in-chief of Al Watan for a second time. Then he published, or allowed, Al Watan to publish a column by poet Ibrahim Al-Almai, or Al-Mai, challenging the basic Salafi premises in May 2010, and that month he was forced to resign, or resigned. He nevertheless maintained ties with Saudi Arabian elites, including those in its intelligence apparatus. In 2015, he launched the satellite news channel Al Arab, based in Bahrain, outside Saudi Arabia, but still on the shore of the Persian Gulf, like Saudi Arabia. However, it only managed to broadcast for over 10 hours before being shut down by Bahrain. Mr. Khashoggi commented chiefly on Saudi Arabian matters on NBC, BBC, Al Jazeera, and Dubai TV. The Independent, a British newspaper, said in December 2016 that Khashoggi had been banned by Saudi Arabian authorities from publishing or appearing on television because he had criticized the US President-elect Donald Trump. In June 2017, he moved to the United States and started to write for the Washington Post. In September 2017, criticizing the Saudi Arabian-led blockade against Qatar, Saudi Arabia's dispute with Lebanon, Saudi Arabia's diplomatic dispute with Canada over human rights, and Saudi Arabia's crackdown on dissent and media. He did support some of the Crown Prince's reforms, like allowing women to drive, but condemned Saudi Arabia's arrest of Ms. Lujain al-Hathlul, who was ranked third in the list of top 100 most powerful Arab women in 2015. Eman al-Nafjan, Aziza al-Youssef, and several other women's rights advocates involved in the Women to Drive movement and the anti-male guardianship campaign. He did, however, despite his otherwise progressive views, criticize Israel's settlement building in the occupied Palestinian territory, saying there was no international pressure on the Israelis and therefore the Israelis got away with building settlements, demolishing homes. According to The Spectator, with almost 2 million Twitter followers, Khashoggi was the most famous political pundit in the Arab world and a regular guest on the major television news networks in Britain and the United States. In 2018, he established a new political party called Democracy for the Arab World Now, posing a political threat to Crown Prince Mohammed. He wrote in early April 2018 for the Washington Post that Saudi Arabia should return to its pre-1979 climate when the government restricted hardline Wahhabi traditions, and that Saudi women should be given the same rights as men, and the Saudi government should allow freedoms of speech and expression. In an article that was published 15 days after his murder, on October the 17th, 2018, he described the hopes of Arab world press freedom during the Arab Spring movement that started following a street vendor's desperate suicide in December 2010, and his hope that an Arab world free press independent from national governments would develop so that ordinary people in the Arab world would be able to address the structural problems their societies face. And this column was entitled, "What the Arab World Needs Most is Free Expression." 13 days after Mr. Khashoggi's disappearance and later confirmed murder, the Saudi consulate in Istanbul was inspected by Saudi Arabian and Turkish officials. That is on October the 15th, 2018. Turkish officials found evidence of tampering during the inspection and evidence that supported the belief that Khashoggi had been killed. First, the Saudi Arabian government denied Khashoggi's killing and claimed that Khashoggi had left the consulate alive. However, 18 days later admitted that he had died inside during a fist fight. So 18 Saudis were arrested, including the team of 15 who had been sent to confront him. US President Donald Trump and several Republican US senators remain divided as to which, if any, economic or other sanctions should be applied to Saudi Arabia. At the time of his death, he was planning to marry Miss Hatice Cengiz, a 36-year-old PhD candidate at a university in Istanbul. They had met in May 2018 during a conference in that city. Khashoggi, who was still a Saudi citizen, had entered the Saudi consulate to get paperwork that would allow him to marry Cengiz, because he was married and divorced 3 times. His first marriage was to Mrs. Rawia al-Tunisi, by whom he had 2 sons and 2 daughters.